Couple of announcements to begin or continue. One, Chelsea gave a wonderful talk on Thursday, and it's online. I would highly recommend listening in. Thank you, Chelsea. Beautiful talk on listening and opening to darkness and spiritual bypass, and just wise and deep. Next week, the Sangha, many of us are going down to Tassajara for Sangha week, so we will not be meeting in person in the chapel, but we will be meeting online, and Erica Wild will be leading the Sangha and giving the Dharma talk next Tuesday, which I think is the 6th and the 8th. So please come. She is going to give a talk on climate change, the climate crisis, and she's also done a lot of work with indigenous peoples. So please, if you're not at Tassajara, recommend coming online. Normally we do the first Tuesday and the third Thursday we do a service. We're going to be at Tassajara, and those of us at Tassajara are going to be doing plenty of services. We got it covered. But what we're going to do today is we'll see how this works. It's going to be an informal, formal kind of memorial recognition of Asian hate crimes against Asian Americans, which of course we can go through any one gate, and as we do this, we'll acknowledge the epidemic and the pain and the suffering of hate crimes. So I looked it up today online. This is, I think, a San Francisco statistic. Nearly 75% of Chinese Americans in San Francisco, but I think it's happening all over the country, have reported racial discrimination, experiencing it in the past year. A lot of it seemed, I mean, there's a history, a long history, but a lot of it was triggered, I think, in current time with the coronavirus and the trying to link it to China and Chinese heritage. And of course we know that China, as things escalate, we're really good at othering. So it's really important to be aware of when we other, in body, mind, or speech, or in our hearts, there are consequences, and there are real life consequences. This same article that I looked to said 2 out of 3, this is Chinese Americans, feel the need to stay vigilant about hate crimes and harassment. And there's a fair amount of things being written about how people are just afraid to go out of their homes. So we, Zen, Chan, our history, our lineage is, Buddha was born in Lumbini, in Indian heritage, but Chan in particular has its heritage roots in China and then Japan, and was passed to us. There's been a fair amount, and I'll recommend two. Maybe I'll do more of this on Thursday too. 2 really wonderful books on the subject. One is the American Sutra by Duncan Riku and Williams. American Sutra. about what happened during World War II and the concentration camps that we perpetrated in this country, and the amazing resilience of the Japanese people and their Buddhist faith that really nobody has written about before, and how it helped people survive in incredibly difficult situations. And more recent, well, not more, maybe more recently, it's called Be the Refuge. Raising the Voices of Asian American Buddhists by, I'm probably going to say her name wrong, Chinzen Hong. She's a young, I think she's Chinese American. There's a fair amount of conversation happening and awareness between what is now being called, I believe, convert sanghas, which we are. We're all converts to Buddhism, and heritage sanghas of, like in Sebastopol, there's primarily a heritage sangha of Japanese Americans, a beautiful little temple south of town. But for most of us, because we identify as white and we identify as converts, and the trappings of westernization that was passed to us, there's a kind of othering that those who are were born into Southeast Asian families and traditions, and what may look to Westerners more like superstitious or devotional kinds of practice, that we, because we're much more westernized and we've come at it in our own way. There's a kind of divide that's happened, and a kind of prejudice that Asian American sanghas, heritage sanghas, are now calling forth quite appropriately. What I want to do today, though, well, continue to do, is in 2021, there was a gathering called May We Gather. It was the first one of Asian American sanghas who came together, because at that particular time there had been shootings in Atlanta that claimed the lives of 8 people, and 6 of them were women of Asian descent. And so sanghas, Asian American sanghas all over the country came together and did a memorial, not just for this, but for to recognize the trail of tears of suffering that has particularly been passed and perpetrated through Asian, in America, on Asian Americans. And they're going to do another one in 2024. The one in 2021, I was there, maybe some of you, I mean, I wasn't there, I was on the live stream. There were tens of thousands of people who attended this memorial. So I wasn't quite sure how I wanted to do this and bring it forward. And when I found that the words of many of the presenters, who are venerable teachers within Asian American traditions, that some of their words were still here and available, I thought that it might be a really beautiful thing to read them and bring them forward. Not because it happened in 2021, but because it's been happening across time and will continue to happen. And it's important for us as Buddhists and as engaged Buddhists to be aware of our fellow Dharma brothers and sisters, and of, as we've been doing in this unit, studying our hearts and minds. And where do we other? I can't remember exactly what Chelsea said on Thursday, but it is what exit are what exits, something about what exits are we? Yes. Study our own hearts and minds. So with your permission, or I hope I have your permission, I want us to sit in a present way, as if we were at a memorial gathering, and to let these words and the energy and the intention penetrate us and our hearts, so that we go forward a little smarter, a little more awake, a little more tenderized, and about our relationship and our indebtedness to Asian Americans who have brought this tradition to us, and to everyone everywhere who is and has been and will be the subject of any kind of othering or hate crime. So I'm going to periodically ring a bell. And we'll stop and we'll breathe. When someone is hurting, we come together as community. We gather because our lives are inexorably interlinked. We do not suffer alone, nor do we heal alone. Only when we gather as a Sangha, as community, can we truly support each other's freedom. When our Chinese immigrant ancestors came to the United States in the 1850s, they faced exclusion and violence. Our Buddhist and Taoist temples desecrated and set ablaze. When our Japanese American forebears were herded into US concentration camps in the 1940s, our priests were classified as a threat to national security, our Buddhist faith deemed un-American. When our South and Southeast Asian parents and grandparents arrived on these shores in the 1970s, many fleeing wars inflamed by the American military, we were told our cultures and Buddhist traditions didn't belong. The first Bodhisattva vow, beings are numberless, we vow to save them all, invites us to manifest freedom together. We welcome Asian American Buddhist temples and organizations, ally sanghas, and individuals of all backgrounds to participate in this ceremony that is ongoing as we continue today. Because, as the sutras remind us, spiritual friendship is the whole of the Buddhist path. We are together in memory of our Asian American ancestors, cultivating belonging and liberation for all beings. From Funi Hugh, who was one of the event organizers. In the face of nearly 2 centuries of xenophobia and systemic violence, Asian American Buddhists have long joined together to rebuild our communities. Piece by broken piece, we sutured the jagged edges of altars, statues, incense burners, and our very bodies and minds back together. This mending is part of our Buddhist practice in America. Each act of rejoining reveals how compassion can arise out of racial suffering, how fragments are inseparable from wholeness. We mend them as a declaration of our interconnectedness, as an expression of gratitude to our ancestors, and as a way to cultivate the karmic conditions for American Buddhism's continued flourishing. Let us honor our ancestors by continuing their legacy of gathering and mending. Reverend Duncan Williams. The Buddha taught that even if you scour the world, there's not a single person who has not experienced loss from the death of someone they love. This sense of loss is only compounded when a loved one passes away suddenly or violently. We gather together, join together, so we know that we are not alone. In ritual and ceremony, loss can be transformed into connection, including connection with those we believe are absent. The Buddha himself told his community just before he died that while he would no longer be physically present, he would still be with them through his teachings and example. Indeed, the Buddha is with us in this present moment. He is here through his teachings, which links the past to the present and each of us to one another. The poisons of ignorance, greed, and hatred have precipitously ended the lives of so many. We gather together to provide an antidote. Wisdom to heal ignorance, loving kindness to heal hatred, and generosity to heal greed. This powerful medicine is available to us whenever the need arises. Our destinies and freedoms are intertwined. The Black abolitionist Frederick Douglass provided a powerful diagnosis and healing when he insisted in a speech that America is a composite nation. The America he envisioned was one that welcomed the Chinese and immigrants of a multitude of races and faiths to the duties of citizenship. A vision of America that values multiplicity over singularity, hybridity over purity, and inclusivity over exclusivity. Today and always we join together to repair the racial karma of this nation because our destinies and freedoms are intertwined. Through the mountain of suffering, though the mountain of suffering is high and the tears of pain fill the deepest oceans, our path compels us to rise up like a lotus flower above muddy waters. Reparative medicine also comes from a saying attributed to Bodhidharma: fall down 7 times, get up 8. At times this means we come back to our breath when our mind wanders, or sit up straight when we slump off the meditation cushion. Other times we return to our precepts and vows when we fall off the noble path. And it is important that we come together as Sangha to recall our interconnectedness, feel the presence of those who have gone before, and to get back up, Though we may fall down 1,000,000 times, we rise again 1,000,001 times in honor of our ancestors and our loved ones who have passed. Sister Kin Yengyam of Deer Park Monastery, Thich Nhat Hanh's lineage. It is imperative that we gather as a spiritual community, today and always, to generate compassion and support for one another as we travel on the path of freedom and responsibility. As we care for our suffering and face the challenges confronting us, we remind ourselves that the way of understanding and compassion is the antidote to fear, violence, and discrimination. How can we cultivate understanding and compassion? One way is through the Buddhist practice of sila, or the ethical path of responsibility and accountability. My teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, has reframed sila as mindfulness training, or put another way, as love in action. We train to love ourselves and love others by being mindful of our actions. We train to generate the energy of mindfulness that helps us be careful of our 3 karmic actions of body, speech, and mind in our daily lives. When we are mindful of what is going on in our bodies, our feelings, our minds, and in the world, we can better avoid doing harm to ourselves and others. As our world becomes more globalized and undeniably more interwoven, we must continue to gather together to discuss and find a global ethic that can help guide society and promote mutual understanding and respect of one another, despite our differences in views, beliefs, and way of living. We know the way forward is not to retreat to our own safety and comforts and ignore what is happening to our communities, to others, and to our fellow Earth citizens, but rather because we are convinced that the path of understanding and compassion is the way forward, not just for humankind, but for all species on this precious planet. Myoke Kane Barrett, Shonen Nichiren Shu Order of North America. The paramita of meditation is the foundation of wisdom and the way to cut through the illusion of ego and thinking of ourselves as separate from other beings. Meditation allows us to focus and master our minds rather than have our minds be our master. And over time, we come to embody the very qualities that the Buddha has: great compassion, gentleness, and patience, and the ability to see the voidness of all things. We should never forget that we are the Buddha's children, embraced by the great love and wisdom which allows us to follow the path of compassion and mercy. The Buddha said, "I am always thinking, how shall I cause all living beings to enter into the unsurpassed way and quickly become Buddhas?" Let us remembering today, together, be the path forward. Xing Han. Oh, great compassionate Buddha, please listen to the serious thoughts of your disciples. Bloody and violent incidents have continuously occurred in the country. Brutal and senseless actions have spread into people's lives. Many Asians and Asian Americans have been attacked or even lost their lives. People from all races and ethnicities now live in fear and worry. We gather now, praying for all victims of hate crimes. O great compassionate Buddha, may you shine your pure radiance upon them and accept them through your compassionate vows. O great compassionate Buddha, we also pray for those who committed the crimes. They are also victims of their own heinous deeds, for hatred has clouded their thoughts. Resentment has blinded their eyes, anger has controlled their behaviors, greed has filled their minds. O Buddha, please let compassion calm their thoughts. Please let wisdom open their eyes. Please let gratitude reform their behaviors. Please let joy free their hateful minds. May we all live in peace with compassionate hearts. May the world be replete with kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. May the world be filled with grace, respect, courage, and wisdom. O great compassionate Buddha, please accept our sincerest prayer. Larry Ward. You are invited to gain insight by looking deeply within yourself and among ourselves to discover our unrealized kinship. We are invited to learn how to water seeds of safety and welcome for one another and among one another. If enough of us recover our kinship beyond time and space, we may realize a breakthrough, a new understanding of human wellness, justice, and harmony. I trust this breakthrough lies within the Buddha Dharma, deeply understood and applied. And to complete, Reverend Christina Moon. In the original Sanskrit, the paramita of virya means vigor, effort, and diligence. For today's purposes, let's think of it as spiritual strength. We clearly need strength to help us forge a path ahead through racism, patriarchy, and other oppressions and inequities. But we also need it to meet the suffering caused by injustice or just the vicissitudes of life with compassion. Nobody would dispute that what the world needs today is more compassion. But consider what compassion really means. The Latin roots of the word compassion are cum and passion. Cum means with, passion means to suffer. So compassion means to suffer with others, perhaps even in the hardest moments of their lives, and it requires tremendous spiritual strength. Where can we find such spiritual strength? we find it together. In our community, our ancestors. Let us commit to matching and finding the deep spiritual strength of those who went before. Let us never forget the ground on which we stand. So, I'm curious. We have a little bit of time. My question would be, but whatever arose for you, is what is spiritual strength? What do you know about that?